So our first speaker is going to beautifully give us an overview of Buddhism in about 5 minutes. And by the way, I'm telling you this now because you're going to think I'm being unfair. Some of the speakers may seem like they have more time, and that's because Nathaniel has risen to the charge of giving an overview of Buddhism in 5 minutes and then sharing about the Thich Nhat Hanh tradition. And Chaplain Vose is with Hospice by the Bay. The next speaker, Lama Palden Dolma, is with the Vajrayana Buddhist tradition. And she is the resident Lama with the Sukha City Foundation. Hopefully we will definitely learn a little bit more about that tonight. Then Reverend Ronald Kobata is the priest minister here. And if I've said that wrong, he'll correct me during his time. What we're going to do, because we have 5 speakers, is when it comes to Reverend Kobata, we're going to shift to ritual first. He's going to lead us in a ritual in the Pure Land tradition, and then he will speak about Pure Land. So he gets 20 minutes. So that's why, again, he gets a little bit more time because he's doing several things. And he's from the Jodo Shinshu tradition of Pure Land Buddhism. And then following that, we will have Reverend Jeremy Levy of the Zen Buddhist tradition from Green Gulch Farm Zen Center. And bringing us all together will be Mark Sponseller of the Theravada Buddhist tradition, and he is here from Spirit Rock Meditation Center. No more talking from me, and thank you all for being here, and thank the 5 of you so much for being here. So, turn it over to Chaplain Vose.
Good evening, everyone. I'm in impossible tasks right now, or challenging things. I have a 4-month-old at home, and so he's been helping me rise to the occasion here. So I'll just give a kind of a brief overview of the history of Buddhism, and I wanted to do that too by kind of outlining the story, which I think is just central, of Siddhartha Gautama, who was to become the Buddha. So Buddhism is a living tradition that kind of grew out of a cultural, countercultural movement in the Indian subcontinent during its day, and it's kind of growing out of the kind of political, the social, religious kind of extremes and realities of that day as kind of a response to something new that we can do. And I'm really hoping too that my esteemed colleagues will kind of maybe help fill this in as they go. So I'd like to just start by telling the story of Siddhartha. So Siddhartha Gautama, he lived in the northeastern part of the Indian subcontinent around the 5th century BCE. He was a prince, the son of a king, Sudana. And at his birth, it was foretold that it was said that he would either become a great sage or a great king. And so his father protected Siddhartha very much so that he would not be exposed to the world and he would not be in discomfort, so as that he would become a great king. But it just so happened Siddhartha was a suspicious man. He snuck out of the palace, and one day he saw 4 signs. I might have happened on different days, but he saw 4 sights. And that was the sight of sickness, old age, and death. And then the 4th sight was the sign of a holy man or a mendicant who kind of showed Siddhartha that there might be another alternative route. So his heart was so touched, kind of having developed over all these years, many lifetimes of kind of this karma of opening heart, that he said, oh my gosh, I felt called to end the suffering of this world. And he left his family, he left his wife, he left his son, to set out on a quest to help end suffering for all beings. And so Siddhartha went into the forest. He went to practice with the great teachers of the day, like the Shramana people who worship fire, and many different great traditions of the day. And he practiced acts of denial, starving himself, holding his breath, doing all these things to try to achieve realization, to end suffering but he found he was only creating more suffering in himself. So he decided one day, when he practically starved himself to death, that he needed to find something different. And this milk maiden came to him and offered him a bowl of rice milk. And he took the bowl of rice milk, he drank it, he felt nourished enough, and then he sat down underneath a Bodhi tree and he practiced anapanasati, or mindfulness of breathing in and breathing out. And in that moment, Siddhartha was rediscovering the middle way, the way that abandons the extremes of nihilism and eternalism, and finding a middle path for himself. And so he sat under the Bodhi tree for nights and days, and until he achieved his enlightenment or realization, and was able to kind of let go of the fetters of his mind and find this peace, this inner peace. And eventually, after he was able to do that, he decided to get up. Thought this realization is too great not to share. And so he went back to some of the people that he studied with, five people that he studied with, and he gave his first sermon, The Turning of the Wheel of the Dharma. And that sermon is the kind of core of which all our Buddhist traditions arise out, and it's a basic teaching of the Four Noble Truths, the truth of the reality of suffering, the truth of the cause of suffering, identifying the causes. The third truth is the truth of happiness, the truth of freedom. And the fourth truth is the path that leads out of suffering and into happiness and freedom and liberation. Great, 1 minute. And this really, and within these teachings, we find the basic tenets and of Buddhism and its focus, which is the practice of meditation, mindfulness, because the last truth brings about the Eightfold Noble Path, which outlines a path for us to follow to end our suffering. And that Eightfold Path is right understanding, right thinking, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. And so when we begin to cultivate these things in our life and follow this path, we find ourselves leading a life towards freedom and liberation. And this is what Siddhartha discovered and he wanted to share. And we find within these teachings as well a sense of a moral ethic or code, a practice of from which meditation, mindfulness, many things are derived out of, and a sense of wisdom. And a nice summary that is found in the sutta, the Dharma Chakra Pavata Sutta, I don't know if I'm saying that right, is to cease from evil, to do what is good, to cleanse one's mind. This is the advice of all Buddhists. To cease from evil, to do what is good, and to cleanse one's mind. This is the advice of all Buddhists. Sounds really nice, simple, you know, and it's a wonderful thing. And so Siddhartha's story, I just want to say, I find very important because it's kind of an archetypal story. It's a story of many of us who travel on a spiritual path, noticing suffering in the world, wanting to find some way out of it, kind of dancing with extremes in our lives, you know, to find that way, and then eventually maybe finding a middle way, a middle path in which can really help to bring us a sense of freedom and liberation from our suffering. So I see this as a common story, one that's really important right now in this world. Actually, but that's my opinion, of course. So I think that's all I'll say about this story.